What's up, meatbags? It's the often imitated, never duplicated Tony, TGD, and today we're going to be reviewing CyberFrog 2 Rekt Planet. That's right, the as of yet released, being shipped as we speak, second comic from EBS, second crowdfunding comic. It's not the second comic. The guy has made lots of comics in his day, but this is the sequel to CyberFrog, the project that was crowdfunded for over $1 million. This one also hit over $1 million. It has been 2 years in the making, and it's finally on its way to be released. I was able to get a review copy. I talked to EBS on a stream I was on last night. Mad Max Movie Entertainment. Ethan Van Sciver was on the stream. We were talking about some things. The topic of CyberFrog came up. I mentioned that I never actually read a CyberFrog comic and that I need to do that at some point. And he offered me a review copy of CyberFrog 2 Rekt Planet. So I said, yes, I'll definitely check this out because I'm interested in it. I've heard about comic skates. I'm not really into the whole comic skate sphere. I'm not really familiar with all of EBS's work. I've heard the name. Everyone's heard the name thrown around. If you're on YouTube, he's one of those people that you hear about, but not necessarily know. Now, like I said, I have never read a single CyberFrog comic. I've not know anything about it. I don't know anything about the character, the comic, the world, the lore, none of that. I was going into CyberFrog 2 completely blind. Okay, now, with that out of the way, I will say that I am not going to show you much of the comic. You know, when EBS gave me, he said, hey, don't show everything, be limited. So I took 3 screenshots of the comic, and it's just 3 sections. It's not entire pages, it's just 3 sections of pages. And I'm going to show those so you get a little feel for the comic, get a little taste, a little tease, but it's not going to be the whole thing. You don't get the full Monty. And I'm going to talk about it. I'll give you my opinion on CyberFrog 2. So now that that's all out of the way, let's talk about the comic. First off, the art in CyberFrog is beautiful. It's beautiful. I love the character design. I love the way the people are drawn. The Vespers, I think that's how they pronounce it. You know, the little murder wasp, murder hornets. I love how CyberFrog is shiny, and you can see things reflected in different parts of his armor. As you can see in this image, off his shoulder, you can see some of the murder hornets. Off of some of the parts of his foot, you can see reflections, and I love that. I love the little attention to detail in all of this. Now, the general story overview of this is, so we're following up from the previous CyberFrog book, which I didn't read, and we're dropped into this world. I guess it's about 20 years later. CyberFrog has just woken up, and he's tracking down Heather. And he finds her in a small community where she has a daughter. Now, when he finds her, he gets attacked by some hornets. He takes it out. Heather's like, hey, let me take you to the community, heal up. Boom. As soon as he shows up, he gets shot by the crazy leader of the community. Now, he has to heal up, get acquainted with the community, sort of be friends with them so they can kind of get used to him. He wants to protect humans, and eventually he wants to go out and fight the Vespers because he doesn't feel like hiding is the best strategy. These survivors, they're just trying to survive. They're not trying to take the planet back. They're not trying to get rid of the Vespers. They're not trying to fix anything. They're just simply trying to survive. And CyberFrog, that's not his deal. He wants to protect these people, and the best way he can protect them is to destroy the threats. And that's his mission. That's his goal. And we get this dichotomy between these two groups. Now, of course, Heather is eventually told, hey, she has to go away. It's her turn to go and search for food, search for supplies. So she goes out. And in that interim, the crazy community leader, he convinces one of the followers to go to Heather's daughter, Lily, and sort of trick her into leaving. Say, hey, that dad that you've been looking for, you need to find him. You're hanging out too much with CyberFrog. You need to go find your dad. You're kind of replacing him. And she's like, yeah, you're right. So she goes off and takes off. And it's all part of his plan to get rid of CyberFrog. So CyberFrog has to leave and go after Lily. And he does. And eventually, he runs into a whole group of Vespers. There's a nice action sequence. He gets his ass handed to him, despite his best efforts. And that's how we leave the comic. We leave the comic with CyberFrog beaten up, hanging on to life. And Heather and Lily are there, and Lily gets taken by the Vespers. Heather's there, emotional, trying to, tell CyberFrog's gonna be okay. And then we get a little tease of what might come in the next issue. I'm not going to spoil it. Again, I'm trying not to spoil any of this. So, if you're like, oh my God, what details, I'm not really being very detailed. Like I said, I'm trying not to spoil. I'm trying to be respectful of the medium, respectful of EBS, and the fact that people are going to read this. They want to read it fresh. There are several characters in this that I'm not familiar with, and if you're not familiar with the world of CyberFrog, if you didn't read the previous CyberFrog or anything else, they just sort of show up. Scorpion and Spite, they sort of show up. There's no real explanation of who they are, why they're there, why they hate CyberFrog, why they now, they do kind of explain why they're trying to help him, because obviously, even though they hate CyberFrog, the Vespers is the bigger threat, right? So they're going to try to use CyberFrog to get rid of the Vespers, and then they're going to go back to trying to kill CyberFrog. But like I said, there's no real explanation as to who they are. They do a good job establishing what's going on. If you're not familiar with CyberFrog, you're not going to really know what he can do, what his abilities are. That's probably explained more in previous issue. But here you just kind of like accept it, move along. It doesn't really explain who. He says he's offline, but I guess he's supposed to be connected to some computer network. Again, if you haven't read the previous issue, you might be, out of the loop on that. I was. It doesn't make the comic unreadable. It doesn't make the comic unable to be followed. But it's just one of those like nagging things in your mind. We're like, well, I don't exactly understand. I get it, but I don't exactly get all the details of it. But other than that, if you've read the previous issue, I'm sure you're going to have no problem with this. It's going to be something that you enjoy. Like I said, I love the art. The story was well paced. The dialogue, some of it was a little iffy. CyberFrog has this 90s sort of vibe to him that's kind of clashing with the dialogue from the characters that are sort of living in the now, if you will. So sometimes he says things like home skillet, and you're like, ooh, it's a little outdated, but it makes sense for the character that he would say outdated phrases and stuff. Like I said, I can't speak enough about the art because it is beautiful art. I love the way the boxing is, the little thought boxes. I love the way that CyberFrog himself talks in a different colored balloon. His balloon is a different color, so when he's talking. It gives a unique feel to the character, a unique voice to CyberFrog. If I had a major complaint about this comic, it would be that it doesn't feel like a complete story. This is great. I'm interested in the world. I want more. But the problem is that it's going to be continued in the next book. And we don't know how long it's going to be until that book drops, right? It took like 2 years for this book. So if it takes another 2 years, like I don't want to wait 2 years to get the next part of the story, right? This feels like almost a weekly comic, and that the next issue should be right around the corner, and it's not. And I think that's a detriment to the story. If it was a more complete story, if it was a more complete tale, like a standalone type thing for the 70 pages, I think it would be a better experience. But like I said, or if the next comic was right around the corner, right? Like you're like, oh yeah, the next one's going to drop next month or 2 months from now would even be an acceptable pace. But having to wait years for the next part of the story, it's almost like I would rather wait until EBS was just completely done with the story and then pick it all up, all at once, all the parts, however many it ends up being. Um, and I think that's my one major complaint. Like I said, it is a good story. It's well told, well paced. Art's beautiful. Characters are great. I know the motivations of the characters. Uh, I know who they are, what they say. They never feel like they're just doing things because the plot demands it. It actually feels organic to each of the characters. Uh, there are subtle storytelling things in the book that you don't get right away, right? If you read the book and you're going to be like, oh my God, this doesn't make sense. Why are they doing X? Or why are they doing Y? And then later on in the book, when you get a revelation, then it starts making sense. You're like, oh, that makes sense why that happened earlier. That makes sense why it was like that. And one of those things I could probably spoil. One of those things is Lily shows up and she's red looking, right? And I didn't get it. I didn't get that her face. Why? Like I was like, this is a weird lighting choice that her face is like red. But then later on, they show her actually applying red makeup. Now we know that red, you have to wear red in order to hide from the Vespers. But I didn't realize until later on that Lily took it to the extreme that she actually paints her face and her body with red makeup in order to hide herself from the Vespers. So then when you see her like this, like, oh, was it a weird coloring thing? Why was she kind of red when they first introduced her in the book? And then later on, you're like, oh, that's why, because she's covering herself in red makeup. It makes sense now. Now it makes sense to my brain. Yeah. And there's other things. There's a couple other things in there when you hear it, when you see it, you're like, oh, this doesn't really make a lot of sense. And then it will. I know there's some previews out there. Some people have talked about this before. They've said some things about like it doesn't make sense. Why did this happen or why did that happen? Trust me, it all makes sense. Everything makes sense when you read the entire comic. When you read the entire book, certain things that you might have an issue with start to make sense. And that's all I can really say without spoiling it. It is a great book. I would definitely pick, if this was on the shelf at my local comic shop, I would definitely pick it up. If this was available weekly, if there was, like I said, if there was a subscription and I was going to get one every week, every month, bi-monthly, I'd definitely be subscribed. This is a great comic. I want to know more. And again, I think my biggest complaint is I am not going to be able to get the next issue of CyberFrog for a while, right? And I guess that's a good problem to have if you're EVS people, leaving people wanting more, leaving people with this sense of that they need another issue. They want to buy another issue. I guess that's a great problem to have for him. It's kind of a bad problem for me because I do want more and I do want to read more. I'm interested in the character and the world and the lore. And there just isn't anything, right? If I had to give this a number score, definitely a 9 out of 10. Not a 10 out of 10. It's not a perfect, it's not a masterpiece. There is, if I want to nitpick, if I want to be real nitpicky, and I did tell this to EVS on stream, there is one spacing issue with one of his word bubbles, right? There's a weird spacing issue. And then there's a weird sort of leg drawn, and CyberFrog kicks one of the Murder Hornet's head. He's got like a weird angle to his leg. Other than that, everything in here is beautiful. Art's beautiful. Story's well paced. I can't say enough good things about this comic. I want more. Ethan, work faster. That's all I could say. Work faster. I want the next issue. I want to see what's going to happen. And I'm definitely going to pick up the previous issue because now I'm interested in the story. I'm interested in this comic. I love it. I want more of it. Let me know when you get the comic. Let me know your thoughts when you see it. Let me know what you think. Do you like the art? Are you interested in CyberFrog? Are you going to get CyberFrog? Did you already order it? Are you waiting on it? I know there's probably some people that are probably upset about how long it took. There might be some people upset about the things Ethan says or the things Ethan does. None of that's a concern to me, right? All I'm concerned about is whether or not the comic was good, and the comic was good. Was it worth the wait? I can't say because I didn't wait. I basically was like, hey, I'd love to read this. And he's like, here it is, right? My wait was all of 15 seconds. Other people had to wait a long time. I understand it. I get that. I understand your frustration. But like I said, for me, it's a great comic, great read. If you get a chance to pick it up, I highly recommend it. Like I said, I'm going to probably go back and buy the previous issue and any other supplementary issues that there are. Because from my understanding, there is like some in-between comic based on Heather, and that he's making like a spinoff of one of the other characters. So I'm on board. I'm a CyberFrog fan, thanks to this comic. Well, that's all I got to say about this. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Love, peace, booty grease. I'm out this bitch.